Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on Oklahoma Gardening, we have a special sneak peek of 3 of the gardens that will be featured on the upcoming Tulsa Garden Club's annual garden tour. We visit a hilltop garden filled with history and bold features, a smaller garden that takes full advantage of its space with enticing pathways to the contemplative spaces and colorful plantings, and an art-filled, turf-free landscape with great repurposed material and its own wildflower prairie.
Today we're at the McBurney Mansion in Tulsa, Oklahoma, home of Wendy and Gittner Drummond. And joining us today is Marcus Clayton, who is the residential horticulturist and gardener on site here.
Yes.
And Marcus, I mean, this is a beautiful estate. How large of a property is this?
So the property is a 22,000 square foot home that sits on a 3-acre lot.
Okay, so that's a lot of garden
Yes.
to maintain.
Yes.
So this home is actually on the National Historic Registry.
Correct.
How does that influence the landscape, and is there any concern that you have to do to protect the landscape around it?
All of the mature trees and with the cedars and the southern magnolias are protected under a historic easement.
Okay.
So they were anything planted with the original house in 1927 is therefore protected under the same easement that protects the home.
All right, so you got to make sure to guard those beautiful, and they're beautiful trees.
Yeah,
You got
and I would leave
magnolias.
them anyway. Any mature tree I want to leave on site anyway,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you've got a lot of trees on this property too. Not only
Yes.
the mature trees, but you've come in with some pawpaws and a lot of fruit trees. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
I've used fruiting trees as well as shade trees as well. So I have 2 different varieties of peaches on site, 1 variety of nectarines, making up for 6 trees that will cross-pollinate one another.
Okay.
There are methley plums on property that I cross-pollinate with some flowering plums, as well as 3 varieties of blueberry shrubs up front, and like you mentioned, pawpaw, which is actually more so not for the fruit, but it's the host plant for zebra swallowtail.
Okay, which leads me to my next thing. You've actually got a Monarch way station also here. Why did you decide to go down that route? I mean, it seems a little more prairie than what the home might lean to with the design and stuff.
Yeah, so coming from a land and riparian restoration style background, when I moved down here, or before I moved down here, when I looked at the property and looked at the architecture style of the house, it screamed cottage style gardening to me. But I wanted to keep it in context with native and naturalized plants here in Oklahoma, which would attract wildlife, including monarchs. This being a portion of the monarch migration path from Canada down to Mexico.
Right.
It just made sense. So I'm using more native and naturalized species that cater to not only monarchs, but all species of butterflies. We host 17 different butterflies here on property, as well as different bird species and whatnot, providing food sources, berries, nectar, seed, and whatnot.
Well, Marcus, I know it's a historic landmark, not only for the city here, but also the state and nationally, of course, and it's great that they renovated it. And let's look a little bit more at some of the renovation they did. I mean, this view is spectacular, right? So,
right.
I mean, so there's a natural spring, is that what I understand? That
Yes, the natural spring starts on the front corner of the property here and comes down along the hillside, which feeds the upper pond down here.
Okay.
It was actually a spring that Washington Irving used to water his horse at.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So there's definitely
There's
some
actually
history
here, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the plant material that you used on this hillside again. So you've got some mixed sun, mixed shade. You've got beautiful dogwoods and lilacs starting to bloom. A lot of things just now coming out. I mean, I know this is a busy time in the garden, and cutbacks and things like that. So tell us what we can see.
Some of the species here, and a lot of them, Up here I was keeping a white theme and with the contrast of purple in the front, but the white is really because a space like this is used more at night. I wanted to reflect the moonlight back off of the white blooms. Coming down the hillside, I'm using more native and natural plants that will actually help with erosion control as well. So you see some of your different sumacs and whatnot that will colonize and hold that hillside in. Where I couldn't use larger plant material, I've used both native seed mixes and some annual seed mixes just to add color pop, but also provide pollination for butterflies and bees throughout the summer.
Yeah, you've got a lot of crooks and crannies between the rocks that are on that hillside.
Yes.
So seeding has worked best for you?
Seeding has worked better than anything else. Some plugs, I've used some sedum plugs in there. That did decent, but with just such small soil, seeding has worked best for me, right?
Excellent, excellent. And I imagine that you get a lot of wildlife and birds coming off of, we're on the Arkansas River right here. Yeah,
about every songbird that native to the area. We've seen painted buntings on site for songbirds. But yes, we have night and blue heron that fish in our ponds, the bald eagles in nesting season, you know, January, February. I've seen 3 at one time. We have 4 different resident hawks that live on site, great horned owls. I've seen barred owls. There's a resident fox that runs around. And I've also seen a bobcat that's closest to the carriage house as my front door.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's an amazing, and we're right here just south of downtown Tulsa.
We're pretty much downtown Tulsa.
Yeah, so to have that sort of wildlife coming in off of the river, it's quite a sight, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this beautiful home with us, and we appreciate you opening up the doors to us.
Thank you.
Florence Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and joining me is Byron Barnhart, who is the homeowner here. And Byron, I mean, who says you can't have color in a shade garden? Can we look at this?
Sure,
this is beautiful.
sure.
I mean, just the curb appeal alone for your home and what we've got here.
Well,
how did you get your inspiration?
Well, I like color. I think the gingerbread houses that are here in Florence Park, they have a lot of character, and I think that that's even more accented with color. And so I started looking for plants that would provide color and actually accent or highlight the features of the house.
Yeah. I mean, the Japanese maple ties in so well with the Tudor cottage craftsman style home. I'm not the architecture person, but it's beautiful with the hostas, the different shades of hostas that you have here.
Right.
Astilbe's really coming on.
Yes.
With your heucheras.
Yeah, and it's these are about a year old, most of the plants in here, and so they're starting to see more color after the second year.
Right.
And certainly are looking much more healthy from the time when they were planted. The climbing hydrangea has gotten to be very large in 1 year.
And it looks like it's got some buds coming on it there.
I think we're going to have some more color there as well. So.
Well, I love how you've tucked in some coleus even in your rocks here, using those pockets that are naturally found in these stones.
Yeah, and there's obviously more space for some more, and so I'm planning on putting some seasonal color in here with just the annual flowers that haven't gotten to that yet, but hopefully we'll be able to do some of that here in the near future. But this has turned out very well, better than I expected, and apparently the things that are in here now like it. So it's a little bit of trial and error until you find the things that will do well in this environment.
We've got a great mix with the Solomon seal and the columbine and the heuchera. I mean, we're barely into spring and you've got so much color coming on already. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's I'm going to miss it when it's gone.
Well, there will be something else. That's when the hydrangeas are coming on.
Right.
So I'm being enticed to come around to the corner here.
Well, I want you to.
Take a look?
Yeah, sure.
And so, again, speaking of color in the shade, I mean, you primarily have hostas, again, a few columbine in here, but look at the color that you have just in the shades of green.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the idea is, I thought, well, not a lot of plants do well in the shade. However, hostas certainly like the shade, and fortunately for me, hostas come in different colors. Just the leaves.
Yeah, it's such a nice little collection, and as we walk through your backyard, and your estate here isn't necessarily that large, but there's so much to discover as we go through it.
Right.
I mean, there's something around every little corner, it seems like.
And that was the idea. This
wall is spectacular.
Yes, it's dry stack and river rock, and that was designed to break up the backyard. So once again, it would force people to want to know what lies beyond the wall, and that was the idea. The inspiration behind this was to get people to ask that question, say, well, what else is next? And so when you come back here, it's I think the Graham Blandies, they soften the wall somewhat and give some color without having to rely on flowers or annuals, since these are such a stark green against that dark stone, and I think that in itself gives you that contrasting color.
So have you designed all of this, or where? I mean, I know you've renovated your whole house.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the design process and where you got your inspiration for the landscape out here.
Well, my inspiration really came from making trips over to Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and I enjoyed going over there. And because I was going over there quite a bit, I liked the narrow pathways and the stairways that always seemed to lead somewhere, but you couldn't quite see where unless you went down that pathway.
We're curious beings, aren't we?
Right. So that was my inspiration for doing this. And I thought the side yard worked out well because it's narrow. And I think ultimately you can do a narrow walkway, and it limits your vision to the backyard. And so much like Eureka Springs, it allows people to come in, and then it forces them to want to say, hey, where does this go? Or I need to go further to see what's back there. But that was a great inspiration for me, and that's why I thought I could maybe do a small version of that right in the city.
Right. Well, you've done a fantastic job, and I know as we kind of look through your house, which will also be on the tour, that you know, there's such intimate spaces, and you've just put so much detail and character in each one of those spaces, and that's truly reflected out here in your landscape as well.
Well, these are smaller homes or older homes, but they have so much character, and I think that sometimes we miss the boat if we pass up these older homes and we don't give them the love and spend the time and money on them to bring them back and actually do some things like this that really make them a pleasant place to live and to be around. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe it'll inspire other people who have some of these smaller homes to spend some time and money on them and do some of the similar things. You can see it's a very peaceful place back here, and that was the idea, was to make it peaceful and a place where you want to come to.
Well, you've done a fantastic job, and we've got a nice deck to take a rest and go up there and take a look at things too as well. Well, Byron, thank you so much for opening your garden to us and showing it.
Very welcome.
We're here at another home in Florence Park, and let me tell you, this landscape looks completely different. We are at the Blue Residence, and joining us today is Teresa Blue. And Teresa, your style, it speaks to me a little bit.
I'm so happy it does.
It's definitely a repurpose, use what you have. I mean, let's look at your vegetable garden first of all here. I love that you have used tree logs to kind of create these raised beds.
Yeah, I like the vertical look and the logs, and I kind of have logs throughout the garden, and I just like to keep things as natural as I can.
Yeah. And so you've got pine straw around. I mean, one of the things that I always try to emphasize is you're building the soil as you're gardening too.
Right.
So you're adding organic matter back in.
Right. So yeah, I'm always building my soil. When I weed or prune trees, I break it up into little pieces and just throw it back down.
Yeah.
And then if I need to cover it up with something to look pretty, I will. But
it's fantastic. And now we transition from the vegetable garden a little bit into your side yard, and let's go ahead and take a look further back here at what you have. So Teresa, I love some of the features people add to their gardens to make it personal. You've got a lot of different bricks and tile work here. Tell me about some of the stuff that you've added in your garden.
Okay, when we first moved in this house, we had a water problem right here, and we were always walking down through here, and it was getting real muddy. And my husband and my son I just had piles of rocks and bricks and whatnot, and my husband and son put this together for me for Mother's Day one year.
Well,
So it's been there for a pretty long time. And these tiles right here, they're drain tiles that I dug up out of the yard.
wow.
I was digging in one of the beds, and I had to dig down like 4 feet for them. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I found the first one, and I couldn't stop myself.
What a great find. And it's part of the history of the house here, right?
Yeah.
So, and you've got an interesting take on screening your neighbors, you know, so that you can have some privacy. So that you've used some corrugated metal here, but you've kind of offset it with some shrubs and things like that.
Right. When I put it in, I did want to screen these, and I wanted something other than complete trees. It was just going to cost so much money to buy that many trees. And my neighbor over here, actually a friend of mine helped me come up with this idea. And then my neighbor is a welder, and he made these for us. So
excellent.
we have them all the way around
So
and
it
into
really
the
was
chicken
a
coop.
partnership to build that fence
Yes,
with
it
your
was.
neighbor.
It was. We all kind of collaborated on it.
And so let's talk a little bit about your water feature here. And it looks like a dry creek bed that you have. Is this
Yes.
a functioning dry creek bed? I mean, does it help with
It
the
is.
erosion? Or?
This neighborhood, we slope downhill, and I get everybody's water. And so it was really a real problem for us. And I just wanted to turn the problem into something that would be a landscape feature.
Well, that's beautiful, and that adds a little bit of the story to the garden again. I mean, you've really repurposed a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
including trellises and
And
water
it's a lot
troughs.
it's a lot of fun when we get a torrential rain to come out here and just watch the
Yeah,
water.
I have a feeling there's nothing that's trash for you. You just repurpose it, right? The wine bottles.
Well, I
that
try
you've
to. I
used
try
and-
to.
Teresa, you're on a corner lot here, and I have to say, this makes quite a statement on the corner. You're not your traditional green yard.
No.
Tell us what you've got in this, and how long has this been here?
This is the second spring for it to be blooming. And, you know, I'm actually one of the few people that have a green yard all year round because the yarrow stays green all winter.
Uh-huh.
And so it looks nice all the time.
And I just love the texture of yarrow, too.
Oh, yeah.
You can't not touch it when you're walking by it.
Well, everybody comes by and stops me to ask me what kind of fern it is. So everyone thinks it's a fern.
So you've got some, looks like some solidago in here, and you really are attracting butterflies and wildlife, right? Is that kind of what your intention is?
And I've got the Monarch way station sign out there, and it is a certified wildlife garden as well. I just have never put a sign up.
Oh, fantastic. So what are, we've got some bachelor buttons in here, what all do you have mixed in here?
Well, the
that's
other
still
blue
to
one
come?
that's blooming is the prairie flax.
Okay.
There is gaillardia, horse mint. See the big silver foliage
Oh,
right there?
Rudbeckia maxima.
I love that. The foliage itself just, makes a statement.
So what kind of maintenance goes into having a garden like this, a front yard like this?
I haven't done much to this since I planted it. When I first planted it, I was on Bermuda watch. Just scared to death Bermuda was going to try to creep in there. And I got some along edges that I had to get out, but haven't had any trouble with it. People didn't think I could kill it without chemicals, but
How did you go about it?
I actually got photos of it. But we mowed it as low as we could, and then we weed eated down to dirt. Mm-hmm. And then we took 2 millimeter clear plastic and covered it all. And
In the summertime, I'm guessing.
yes, at the beginning of August.
Okay.
And we actually did it the year that we had the coolest August that I remember in Tulsa, so that wasn't really the best time to do it.
So the solarization helps
Yes.
suppress the Bermuda, and then I would imagine all of
Yes.
this shade cover has really suppressed it too.
Right, yeah. And when we got it all killed out and took the plastic off, then I just broadcast the seed by hand that I mixed. I ordered it and mixed it. And then I put down a cocoa mat over it to hold it down so that the birds and so that it just didn't get float off with
Right,
the
right.
weather, with erosion, and the birds didn't get it. And then that cocoa mat just, disappears over time. So
Well, this is fantastic, and I imagine it changes through the months of the season.
it does.
And stuff.
It's fun to watch. And I still don't. I'm not familiar with every plant that I planted, so a lot of times I have to look up what I'm not sure. Someone says, "What's that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe I'll know when it blooms." You know, it's just recognizing, being able to learn how to recognize the foliage.
Well, and so often some of those plants change from when they're a young seedling to adult plants.
And I'm told it takes 3 years for a prairie garden to mature. So I have grasses in here too that if you just really look around, you'll see some new things coming up that were not up last year.
Well, it looks fantastic,
So,
and I think you're making the butterflies happy. This is great to see in such an urban environment. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
We're joined by Brenda Micheal-Haggard, who is the co-chair for the Tulsa Garden Club's annual tour. And this isn't your first garden tour that y'all have done.
Oh no, this is 69th.
69th. Man, you guys have been mastering it, and you've got great houses on the tour again this year. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
We have 5 gardens with 2 interiors. All of them have historical Tulsa ties. 2 of them are in Florence Park, which is one of our historic neighborhoods, and the other 3 are just off the Arkansas River.
That's fantastic. So beautiful vistas. And so what are they going to see as far as garden-wise? What are some of the different types of gardening they might see?
We have large and small and highly manicured and cottage style, and then vast spaces with perennials and wildflowers and pollinators and. So there's creative landscape design, there is creative hardscape, gorgeous things that they have stabilized in the infrastructure, and then rainwater management, water features, lighting.
That's fantastic. So how did these tours get started, and what was the purpose of them for the club?
Tulsa Garden Club was formally organized in 1929, and all the time before organization and after, the women who were new to what was Indian Territory and the great Oklahoma, they were coming from other places, so they were learning from each other, visiting their own gardens and testing things out, what's going to grow in this part of the world. So those tours started out with just the members, and they opened them to the public to help educate.
And 69 years later, we're still
Here we are.
getting ideas from visiting other people's gardens.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit, if anybody's interested in going, they have to go on this tour.
They have to go on the tour.
They've got to see some of these houses. They're absolutely amazing. And they're not only getting to see the gardens, but the houses in a couple of locations as well.
The 2 interiors.
Yeah. So for viewers who are definitely wanting to get on this tour, how can they get tickets?
Our website has all the information, of course, but if you're here in Tulsa, any viewer can swing by Tulsa Garden Center, 2435 South Peoria Avenue, or go onto Eventbrite.
Okay, all right.
Those are advance tickets, and then the day of, tour tickets are $15 at each of the gardens.
Okay, so $10 in advance, $15 day of at any of the gardens.
Yes.
And the addresses are posted on your website too if they want to show up the day of.
Yes.
Excellent. And so, of course, this is one of y'all's big fundraisers. Tell us a little bit about where the proceeds go.
Tulsa Garden Club projects, conservation, education, beautification, including Tulsa Garden Center that the club helped establish in the mid-1950s, ongoing operations and endowment.
That's fantastic. And so on the tour, they're going to see artists also and a couple of other things, maybe trellis for sale.
We will have an artist in action at one of our gardens and her note cards available for sale. Proceeds benefit, of course, the club. And then Garden Diva has custom designed a trellis and garden poles from Tulsa Garden Club's original crest.
All right, so let's finish with what date and the hours that we need to get over here to these Tulsa Gardens.
Saturday, May 4th, 10 in the morning to 5 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you, Brenda. We know where
Thank
all
you.
the gardeners in Tulsa are going to be.
Yes.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week, we visit a home with an urban food garden. OSU turfgrass specialist Dennis Martin has seasonal information for your lawn. Micah Anderson from Langston University joins us with tips on selling at a farmer's market. And Casey has another fun way for you to share your garden with us. We hope you join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.